And Auntie Wemi joins us this morning on the Bumper Breakfast to talk about safeguarding our children in from wherever they are, especially as religious centers. I'm sure that, Auntie Wemi, good morning first.
Good morning, good to be here.
How are you today?
I'm good, I'm fine.
When you saw that story yesterday about the kids, how many of them now? We're talking about 216,000 victims of sexual assault from clergy. You know, I was shocked.
I wasn't shocked.
No, I was. The number shocked me.
I wasn't shocked, but that's the reality, and that's the reported ones. We still have some who are not reported.
And we're talking about children.
And we're talking about children.
Not
so
adults.
if you look at the statistics, which means, permit me to use the word, 2,000 what?
116.
2,116 monsters.
200
monsters. 2,116 monsters. These are people who will be fathers, mothers, who would lead, who will be in the community. All right, so we have.
So you're saying that the event,
the
incident, has made them potential monsters.
Potential, and we have some of them who are already perpetrators because they were also abused. And when you're talking about religious leaders, what people need to understand is these people have very strong hold on people. Okay, they have a stronger hold than parents on children, than spouses. Okay, between one another. So the power that is conferred on a spiritual leader is enormous. And those
is conferred
well, by who? I can't tell. By ordination, by office, by the society.
Is it the society? Because is that the way God made it, or is that just the society?
Well, you know, when we talk about religiosity around here, it's been bastardized. Okay, a religious leader is a humanitarian.
In the real sense of the word.
So you are meant to serve in the faith community, or because they are not being checked, because there are no policies that guide the way they interact, the extent to which they go with people and lives, especially children. So they have become the almighty, as it were. So there is a form of power in their hands that nobody is checking. So this same thing is what they use, and it's become an abuse of power. Let me use that word. Okay, abuse of spiritual power. So children are mostly susceptible to abuse in their hands. You know, you talk about spiritual abuse. They see something about your child and they say, this child is this. You who owns the child, as it were, you could not see that your child will be needing some psychological help, spiritual or whatever. It is the spiritual leader who tells you what your child needs. And then you subject your child to abuse. They give them all manners of concussion, give to children. And they even beat children in the bid to remove the spirit, as it were. All right, and they subject them to sexual violence, because at the end of the day they use the word, they have to be
you bring the child
undercover. Let me bring it down whole. So when they cover them and they be under the cover of the leader, and the leader covers them, and then he begins to cover them and they expose children to all manners of violence, dealings that children are not meant to be subjected to.
Is this a male child thing or a female child thing? Because coincidentally,
it's children thing.
No. But coincidentally,
both male and female.
That report from the Roman Catholic Church actually talked about the boys. The boys,
yes,
were the larger part of the victims.
Yes, I agree. And because most of the people who lead in that line of faith or that line of religion, are male. So they allow the male to take the forefront. But you discover that these males will end up violating other male children, and male children end up violating other sisters. So you are having issues on both male and female. So children are the larger, they are the ones at risk. And this is what we tell parents, please. Your spiritual leader, it's okay to have it, just like you have leaders. It's okay to have spiritual leaders. But just understand that your spiritual leader is, first of all, human. He's there to serve you. You are not meant to use your children to serve them. So limit the exposures, how much exposure you give. Okay? Number one, limit their influence on your children, their influence on your family. Because we've seen a lot of spiritual leaders, as it were, who have entered into homes and they have destroyed those families using children with all manners. I don't want to go into all of those things, but the truth is, if you cannot solve your issues, no spiritual leader can solve it for you. Yeah, so you need to understand, for parents who are listening or anyone who have something to do with a spiritual leader, tell your children this person could abuse you, especially sexually, because the sexual abuse is the most rated, is the most, it's one top in it. It begins with verbal abuse, where they begin to say things to your children. They wash them down and they make them feel like we are the ones who see things that you can't see about children, about your child. So you have to bring your child to me, that spiritual abuse sets in, and then sexual abuse takes over. So parents need to understand that, number one, some of these spiritual leaders have sexual problems. They are victims themselves. They
are sexual predators.
They are victims themselves. So their wives are having issues with them, even their spouses, because a spiritual leader who is a predator, perpetrator could also be a female, violating other females. So don't think they can't do it, but I'm not saying they will do it. So when we're talking about safeguarding, which means you are trying to prevent it from happening. You're trying to protect your child from exposure to being violated. Not that when it has happened and then you are looking for a way around it. You are damaging that child. Now, I also say, please, parents, don't ever force your children to respect any spiritual leader. Because if your child says, I'm uncomfortable, there's something your child is not okay with. Now, when it comes to child protection policy, please, a child has a right to choose. I'm telling you. But here we don't respect the rights of children. He said, because this is where I go to, that's where you must go. Because I see him and bow, you must bow. Excuse me, your child has the right to say, I don't want to bow.
I know a particular family whose children, all of the children except for one, do not attend the same church as the parents. From when they became adults, when I mean adults, I mean over the age of 18, they just stopped coming. They just stopped going to the church. Another pastor's wife shared with me, I think on one of our live videos on Instagram a couple of months ago, I think it was last year, and she said that she was consistently abused by the pastor's son.
Now let me tell you something.
Because their mother, their parents usually drop them in the pastor's house on the way to work. So during holiday, it is more of, this is the routine. Children, dress up, pack your food, and then they drop them in the pastor's house. And the pastor's son,
I have a personal policy which I'm going to sell to families. Don't ever release your children into the hands of another person, including your spiritual leader, without you being involved.
Present.
Don't. And then sleepovers, very, very deadly. What sort of thing is that? It's not okay, it's not proper. See, let me tell you something. One thing you need to understand is a perpetrator could be anybody.
Could be anybody.
And spiritual leaders are now topping it. Then fathers.
Religious leaders.
Okay, let me use it. Religious leaders. Alright, okay. Alright, and then fathers. Now, two major areas where children are mostly susceptible: homes and religious centers. Homes and religious centers. So if you have been able to safeguard them in your home, then the next place you should look into is the spiritual centers where they go to. So parents should educate their children on what abuse is, okay, how to look out for the signs. Now, you need to know, if you're a parent listening and watching right now, Perpetrators no longer force children. They buy into them.
Yes.
They are kind to
Many
them.
of them.
They are generous to them. All right? They tease them. Excuse me, when your child begins to feel uncomfortable or feel too comfortable, then step in. Don't give that room. Then encourage your child to speak up, because you need to talk to them about boundaries in terms of physical boundaries and communication boundaries. No spiritual leader should have direct access, unlimited direct access to your child without passing through you. You want to talk to my child, let them talk to your child through your phone. Even when you are not there, because that time they might say, I want to pray. No problem. We will pray and say amen. But excuse me, I'm not going to be far away from where that voice is coming from. So parents need to sit up. Don't abandon your children into the hands of this spiritual, let me say, religious leaders.
It is so bad now that the old fronts seem to have gotten the healing a little bit when it comes to abuse. People are becoming more conscious. You're watching your mates, you're watching your family members.
But you're not watching your
leaders. But when we get to church or mosque, we just tend to drop our guard, and then we all feel like,
let me tell you something.
Abuse adults.
Let me tell you something. The reason for that is, don't blame parents. Because when we look at things, don't blame them. See, the ideal situation is, I must be able to feel at home
in church.
I'm not talking about churches. In a spiritual religious center. I must, because after home should be that place.
Yes.
Ideally. But the situation in town now is things are no longer normal. So don't feel at home. That's the word. Because a lot of religious leaders are very, very immoral now. Things are no longer the way it used to be. They go after young girls, teenagers. Some even say they use it for spiritual whatever. I don't want to know. You are immoral if you do that. And the law is against it, especially the Child Protection Policy, Child Rights Act of the federal So if you are caught, so that's what we tell children. And don't just accept gifts, because they give them gifts. They flash them with a lot of gifts. So parents, when you see your children,
pastor buys your child a laptop.
Excuse me, are we related? Even when we are related, you need my permission to give my child a gift. And you tell your children, when they give you stuff, bring it to me, show me, let me go and appreciate him. When the spiritual leader knows that a parent is in the middle, there will be a lot of restriction.
They move back.
Don't leave them step back. And then I'll say that religious centers should please watch out. At times it may not be the religious leader. It might be the people under them. The people who deal with children in the churches, teenage whatever, and all of that. The people they use in to supervise them.
The activities.
Come up with child protection policy in your center. Tell them what the law says about it. Bring the training to your center, to your religious center. Let parents know what to look out for. Let teachers, who are teaching your children, know that this place, we are under the law. One thing people should know is the churches, the religious mosques, they are also under the law. They are not above the law. So this is what the law says about children. And there is every likelihood you have more children in churches and mosques than you have adults. True. So protect them. You owe them that protection.
As we round off this morning, Auntie Wemi, I need to say a big thank you for bringing it. So we'll still be talking about safeguarding our children again next week. And this time around, I would like us to deal with what to do when you find out your child has been abused in a religious center. How do you close, Mariam?
This is so interesting, and in fact, I've gotten a whole lot of things I want to work on, and I would like to share with my older sister. So I will be closing this way, that we're ready for the unexpected. Do not get too comfortable with your environment. I remain Mariam, and I leave you into the hands of the Almighty.
My name is Tomisin. I'll see you again tomorrow morning on the Bumper Breakfast. Don't forget, safeguard your kids. It's your responsibility. They are your future. Have a beautiful day.